Hello everyone! Week 11, we're going to be going over almost all the modifiers today, not all of them. Just the ones I think are important. And Cadbury is here. I think he's sad because he's hungry. So enjoy him on my shoulder. Wait, yeah. And this is going to be a long one. We're going to try to explain helpfully why you might use a lot of these modifiers. So let us go! Done. Here they are. We learned. So let me do a zoom. Again, I'm not doing all of them. This first section, the modify section, a lot of this is for animation focused. We're just going to go over two of them. So data transfer, the first one we're going over. This one, it has a lot of stuff to it. But the reason I might see you guys using it is if you had a book you had and you duplicated it throughout your scene, and then you did materials and you're like, oh, I have to do UV unwrap. Now I have to delete everything and reapply everything. You can use this data transfer to transfer your UV info. So this cube right here, I just have my seams marked. So I did the Control E mark seams, and I just marked all of them. And then I have this new cube that doesn't have anything marked. So I can go into my data transfer area. You can see there's a bunch of tabs. If I check mark stuff, more info comes up. So there's probably more helpful reasons to use this, but it's really going to be special case scenario. But UV seam, let's do this for example. If we hit apply, oh, I need a source object. If you hit apply, nothing happens. So we need to choose our intended markage pattern, which is this OG cube. So if I drop or bottle that and then hit apply, off to a rough start, everyone. You can see now I have those seams marked. And then I could do my UV unwrap and it'll be fine and dandy. So data transfer, mostly useless for us, but maybe helpful sometimes. The next two are just for importing animation info, the mesh cache, mesh sequence cache. I'm going to skip normal edit and we're going to go to weighted normal. Normal edit is kind of similar to weighted normal, but you have more control over it and it's more difficult. So this is my 3 example cubes for the weighted normal. So this cube on the far left, if I go into edit mode, we can see, so the bottom right has info of how much stuff this is. So I can see this is 218 faces. So it's a nice looking smooth cube. Then I have this cube that it's very similar. The real difference is just this corner has a little sharpness. But this is only 54 faces. So it's a very comparable cube, but a substantial amount of less faces. So that'll save your computer. And what I did is I added that weighted normal modifier. So this is this 54 faces cube without the weighted modifier. You can see the difference in the lighting, how the lighting reacts, and it's basically telling your normals to be smarter about how they're facing the light. So let's put a new one on this friend. Weighted normal. And you need to do one thing. It actually has a little emergency sign to tell you about it, but you need to enable auto smooth for this to work. So in our object data properties, under the normals tab, if you hit auto smooth, then you can see it appear. So this is just if you want your normals to be a little bit more smart about how they're reacting to your lighting. Save some of your computer's brain power. So I'm actually going to delete this modifier. and get rid of this shade smooth. Next, we're skipping. So we have UV project, UV warp. This is basically our mapping vector that you put in your shader info, but it gives you like viewport control over it, so you can like move around how your UV is laying on it. So again, that's really handy for animation, but we're fine with just using the mapping, because then you can like animate like keyframes of like the direction that like UV is and such. And then all of the vertex weight stuff, that's weight painting. So again, mostly is used for rigging animation, for like to say how much influence a vertex has. We also use it for particles though. So I cover like weight painting a little bit in the particles video, but these are just some more modifiers specifically for weight painting. And now we go to where we need to like do every single modifier. So the generate tab, first one we have array. This one is very handy if you need to like fill a bookcase up with books. I'm going to use books for like every example. The just like auto one is you can place, determine how many objects you're placing. We have relative offset selected, so that means one of that object's like size between each shape, like one object next to each other. I don't know how to say this correctly. If I do 2, it's going to be like 2 objects amounts before it places it. And this is, we have X, Y, Z direction, so I could put it in all these directions if I need. We also have constant offset. So constant offset will be determined by an actual measurement. So if I want to move my block over like 12 meters 7 times, you can see it placing it like so. Same way you have X, Y, Z, you can move it up and through space. What's super handy with this is we can also use this to like follow paths. So rather than going in a straight line with fixed count, we can use it in tandem with another object, which I'll show in a little bit. So this is fixed count. That's why we're choosing like a number of how many we want to repeat. We also have fit length. So if I put like 10 meters, it's going to duplicate as many cubes as possible in that 10 meters. But we also have fit curve. So for this we need a curve. Shift A, Bezier. Bezier. Move over here. This is fine. This is fine. So we have the fit curve on our cube. If we drop that curve, you can see our cube array is now as long as our curve. So nothing too fancy yet. To actually make it follow this curve, we need to use another modifier called the curve modifier. So go up to your add modifier section. Under the deform, there's curve. So click on that, and then you also have to assign that curve again. And now you can see, let me move that over. Actually, can I move both of these up in space so it's not intersecting? You can see now our cube is following this curve. And it like scales it to the turns. It does like the rotations you need. So this is really handy if you have like some kind of like beaded necklace or chain, maybe like a fence where you need to like follow a more organic path. You can use both the array and the curve modifier in once. So that's what this boy is doing too. Next we have bevel. I'm just gonna like quickly, because we've done this. Bevel, we have a lot of these. We have an edit mode version of this tool. So bevel is gonna bevel the whole object. Every single edge, it's going to like add the chop, and you can change how big the chop is, how smooth it is. But again, you can do an edit mode version of this where you choose specific edges to do it on. We also have Boolean that we've done before. So this, you're using another object to either cut into your object, cut something out of your object, or add something onto your object. And then it makes the worst mesh possible. We have build, which I don't actually know why you would use this, but so you can see it made my object disappear, and if I hit play, nothing happens. Hello? Oh, I'm in the wrong part of my screen. You can see, wait, now we ruined the surprise. It slowly builds my model. So if I had more subdivisions in this, pop, 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 and then I do it, we can see it build even more. So if you want a partially built cube, well, we have a modifier for you. Beautiful. That's exactly what we wanted. What else do we have? We have decimate, which is a, let me use it on this friend. This is like a gambling, risky way of trying to make your poly count smaller. I have had 2 successes out of 3 doing this for this demo, or 2 out of 4. Let's see. So there are other things to use this for. I've never used them for that. I've just used it for the unsubdivide. So this has so many subdivisions, but I just want it to be a simple cube, so it doesn't need this many. Rather than having to go through and like delete faces and like re-clean everything, I could try to use the decimate, and it's going to like have the amount of faces. So right now you can see I'm at 216 faces. If I do one iteration of subdivide, it's at 108 and becomes not a cube. It's worked again. I don't get what the difference is. But now with 2 subdivisions, you can see I'm only at 54 subdivisions. Let me hit apply. So if I hit tab, it's still going to have all those faces. If I hit apply, it's actually going to apply it in unsubdivide. Excuse me. With applying modifiers, be careful, because modifiers are non-destructive up until you hit that button. So if you are going to do that, I would advise doing like a duplicate object and then like hide it, just in case you do need to like go back to working with the modifier. But you can see it nicely worked. Sometimes though, let me do it on this friend really quick. Why am I calling all of these my friends? They are not my friends. Let me just do like 2 on this. Is it gonna just like work again? No, it didn't. It did. Like you can see it looks fine. But if you look at the polys, it becomes a little bit wonky. So technically I could go back in now and like clean this up a bit. I can make this one whole face instead of like the 2 triangles it decided to make. So it might need some loving care. So unsubdivide, decimate, that's what it is. Next one is another thing. I don't know why you would use this except for making an open box. So what I did is, so edge split. What you do is you mark edges sharp. So I haven't talked about this before, but you can go into edge mode and like select edges, and then if you do Control E and mark sharp, it helps. Like if you do shade smooth or like subdivision surface, it'll keep that a little bit sharper. So I went in and I just marked all of my edges sharp, because for edge split, you can have it read either by the angle the edge is at, or it looks for sharp edges. And if I hit apply, so actually before it acts like a cube, let me take off my soft selection. And now after, it took its hat off. So this like separated the object at all those mark sharp edges. You also, if you do want to use this tool for whatever reason, there is an edit mode version of it, which is called rip region. So if I have an edge selected and I do rip region, I can yank it off. So now I have an open box. What do we have next? Mask. Mask is useless. We're never going to use it. It's just like hiding your objects. There could be like some other purpose for this, but all I know it for is to hide stuff. And you can apply and it'll permanently hide your object. So that's what mask is. We can hit H. We're fine with H. Next we have mirror, one of the most helpful ones. So mirror, when you're modeling something a little bit more complex but symmetrical, so like a piece of furniture, like a wardrobe, anything organic. So if I was modeling a cat or a person, I'd probably use mirror because it lets you model half of it and just having the other half like perfectly mimic what you're doing on the one half. So you don't have to like worry about grabbing both sides of vertices and like scaling them the same and such. So that's actually what I did to make this archway. Is while you're modeling, there's probably going to be a point where you want to chop it in half because it'll be more efficient that way. So I went in and I chopped it right down the middle. You can do this just with your edge loop cut knife, loop cut. And then you're going to go in delete half of your object. I'm going to be in face mode. So I'm just going to delete half of my faces. Did I not? Oh, I wasn't in X-ray. So now, once I go back to this mode, you can see I just have half my archway. And now if I put on the mirror modifier, I have a whole archway again. But if I go into edit mode, you can see I only have control over the one side, and it is mimicked on the other side. You also have different axes you can like mirror it on if you need. And it will be mirroring at that center point. And once I need control over both sides again, you might want to save a duplicate of this object, but I can hit apply, and then I can go in and have like personal individual control again. Mirror, super helpful. What do you have now? Multi-resolution. I'm not going to teach it. It's for if you're using like a sculpting program like ZBrush and you have like a really high poly mesh just to get the intricacies. The multi-resolution is like a combo of our subdivision surface modifier and our decimate modifier in one, and it's just going to like redo your topography, your mesh for you in like a smarter manner. Remesh is something I also am not sure what you'd use for besides making pixelated versions of your objects. So I put the remesh on this archway. We have different options. We have smooth. You can see now it's a smooth version, sharp version, voxel, blocks, and then each has like an octree depth, which is going to be basically how much definition it has, Be careful with this because I just like slid it over my first time and it just crashed my computer. So you can see this is how defined it is. And then if I hit apply in this, so before, after, it's this little like Minecraft arch. You can plan out some Minecraft creations in Blender with the reskin or remesh modifier. And now we have screw. We'll just kind of glance over this as well. We used this for our base. It's going to look wonky in this because I have like a closed cube that's trying to swirl, but you can rotate it. You can change how far it rotates with the angle. If you want it to actually like physically like make a screw, that's what this screw thing's for. So if you need to make ridges on a screw or a phone cord, screw, or just rotate, which is probably going to be the more often thing you use. Skin, I just learned about skin. So let me just put the skin on our cube for now. You can see it kind of makes this weird like boxy mesh around my cube where my edges are. What I saw most people using it for was to just work with lines and to use the skin to make a mesh out of it. So that's what this actually is. So if you go in, actually wait, no, come back. I wanted to take it off of this one. If I import like a plane or a cube in and delete everything except for one edge, and then I can go into edit mode, do some extrusions, and then put on this skin modifier. You can see it puts like a low poly skin around it. So this would be really helpful if you need to make any kind of like armature, if you need like lanky appendages, or just like to set something out. You can just like draw by just hitting E. So I'm just hitting E and extruding. You also have a new hotkey, which is, I'm gonna forget. Control A? Yes, Control A. So Control A while you're working with this, you can change the power of your vertex. So this is probably going to be more helpful to see in wireframe. But if I hit Control A on this vertex, I can make it smaller or bigger. I can also go back to some of these vertices and like extrude out. So I can make some alien arm. And then I can always go in, once I have this, if I wanted a little bit more defined, I could either put a subdivision surface modifier on it, or I can hit apply and I actually have these polys to physically work with. Undo my apply. Let me put it on this one because I'm going to try to do something later and I will probably crash my computer, so I need that one instead. What am I? Oh, I'm in edit mode. Okay, next. Skin. Solidify. We've worked with solidify. This one, if you want just to get like a full object without having to like do an extrusion, so if you just have a flat plane but you want it to be like a chunk, you can use solidify. Add thickness, subtract thickness. It's just a little bit wonky sometimes with how it intersects with itself. So sometimes you might need to go in and clean it up a little bit. But same thing goes if I actually want control over these faces it made, I would have to hit apply. Next, speed run. Subdivision surface, we know that one. It's our best friend. It's going to do fake smoothness for you so you don't have to ruin your computer's brain. Am I not hitting shade smooth? I don't know what I'm doing. Subdivision surface. Triangulate? We don't need that for this class, but if you like work with Oh, this is because it's a skin. I'm going crazy. If you want to work with triangles instead of polys, you can do triangulate. Oh, I have to apply it first, everyone. You can see it made my mesh made up of triangles instead of polys. And now we have something that's useful. We have weld. So weld is like a big influence version of cleaning something up. So instead of doing the GG slide, hitting A, going up to mesh, clean up, merge by distance, this you would put on the weld modifier and set a distance, and it's gonna like eat up vertices within that distance. So you can see on this cube, I have like these really close vertices. I have these further out ones. So if I go into object mode and increase this distance, I'll do like that. Hit apply. You can see it cleaned up those top close vertices. Just be careful with this one that you're not doing like too big of a distance to eat up more than you intended. But it is like a nice big way to do it, to clean some stuff up so you don't just have like these vertices close to each other for no reason. It'll do a mass cleanup, but will might clean up more than you intend. Next we have wireframe. It's gonna make a wireframe version of your mesh. So it's just making a little like wiring where your edges are. Don't crash. Okay, we're fine. So if you need any kind of like steel structure, you have wireframe. So that's all the generate modifiers. Now we're going to go on to deform. So first one we're skipping over, armature. That would be geared towards, So the first one, armature, that's more geared towards, again, animating and rigging. It could be handy if you have some kind of like anatomy form you have to like position in your scene, because it'll give like bones to work with rather than just like smushing around the skin of the mesh. But we'll skip over it. Cast. So this is, I just put a cube in. It has shade smooth on it. And then if I hit cast type, there's 3 different types, sphere, cylinder, and cuboid. It's going to influence our shape to become that cast type. So factor, increase or decrease it, will either have like, you can see spheres starting to come out of the faces, or we have negative and it kind of looks like it's pressing a sphere into the faces. So that is a thing. Could be useful for like making berries or a nice little like slightly squished in cube. A lot of deformers are going to be really helpful on just like general changes to your form, especially on things that are more complicated, and rather than having to use proportional selection, you can use one of these deformers instead. So next is curve. We did that. We used array and curve to have this cube follow along that curve. Next, we have displace. So I actually have some extra object right there. So this is a cube. How many, I didn't say that on this one, but how many subdivisions you have is really going to affect like how nice these modifiers look. So you might want to work with them in tandem with a subdivision surface to cheat the amount of subdivisions, so you don't actually have to work high poly. I'm going to put displace on. When you first put it on, it just looks like a bloated cube, but we have a texture part pop up. So either you can choose a pre-existing texture you have, or you can hit plus new, and And this is assigned a texture, but we can go in and tell what this texture is. So we worked with textures before with texture paint. We're going to go down to the texture properties menu, and we can change what the map it's using. So you could either import something, choose one of these presets, and it's going to distort your mesh working with this map and with how many vertices our cube has. You can also play around with some of the settings on the map itself. But now let's go back to our modifiers. You also have this strength option. So you can either like do negative, positive, how extreme it's going to be to kind of like blur up the surface. So this might be handy for just like making ground and just giving it an unevenness. So that is displace. Next we have hook. I'm going to skip over this one as well because we've gone over it. We used it for doing our curtain. It's where sorry, my voice is like going out. We did Control H to apply the hook on a vertex. We assigned it to a vertex, and then we did keyframes of where our hooks were to animate our blanket. Laplace and deform. I'm also going to skip that. This is for, I think you work with it in tandem with hooks maybe, but it's a more intelligent way of deforming, where if you have a very complicated mesh, some kind of like form that you're trying to deform, but it's like deforming too much, the Laplace and deform, it will keep your mesh like a little bit more structural. It like understands like what your mesh is and it keeps it a little bit more realistic. We have lattice. Lattice and mesh deform are the same thing. It's just a matter of what you're using. So this cube, I applied the lattice deform. And what a lattice is, if you do Shift A, there is this lattice object that you can add in. Where is it? It's just going to look like a wireframe box. And I put it around my cube. And then I guess I'll just like reapply this. You assign it, and then depending on how you mess around with your edit mode for your lattice, it's going to deform your intended object. So same thing goes for mesh deform, but this would use an actual like poly mesh. So if you wanted to use like a cylinder or a sphere to deform your object, you can do that. But this is really handy if you have, again, like a complicated mesh. Rather than having to use proportional selection to smush stuff around, you can just use a lower poly mesh. Sorry, I'm like getting so hot. I need to turn my AC. Next we have shrink wrap, which is hidden. A few of you were using shrink wrap for your midterm, which was big brain power. So most people actually use shrink wrap to like re-poly, resurface. I don't actually know what the word is right now, but it's like on the tip of my brain. Retopo? No, that's not it. So you'd usually have like a high poly something and then a low poly plane, and you slap it on to like remesh it. So I'm going to put on my shrink wrap modifier. I'm going to choose a target, so it's going to slap onto this cube. And then there are different modes. I have the most luck with the project mode. And you might be like, that is not luck, nothing worked. So this one relies on like which direction our normals are facing. So this plane, the normals are facing upward, so positive. I want it to look for something in the negative direction, so going down. So if I check mark negative, you can see it slaps onto it. I can choose an offset to have it go like further away. If you need like a cloud system above your ground or something. So that's shrink wrap. You'll just have to play around with the settings a little bit for it to work. Simple deform. Simple deform, again, gonna kind of rely on how many subdivisions you have, but if you need to twist, bend, taper, or stretch, so I put them all on this cube, I can choose which axis I do it in, but I can twist my object, bend the object, taper. If I did taper, I would most likely use the lattice instead because I get a little bit more control. But the like twist and bending and stretching is pretty helpful for this. Again, for really high poly objects, it'll have a more exaggerated effect, and if you have like a complicated mesh, it would be easier to deal with than going in with your proportional selection. Smooth. So this is one of my displaced objects, and I put on this smooth modifier, which is gonna smooth it out. So you want to work with the repeat button because it's going to smooth it out on a smaller scale. The factor will do it on a more extreme scale. But you can see it smooth it out. We also have Laplacian smooth. We have smooth corrective, which for some reason I marked down not to cover this one, and I honestly have no idea why not. And I meant to check why, but for some reason, it's not useful. I didn't see it as useful, but our Laplacian smooth is. So this is like, I didn't go over Laplacian deform, but it's like a more intelligent version of smooth where it like understands your mesh a little bit more. They moved the repeat up here, so be careful about that. But this is like the small scale smoothing, and then we have factor, and you can see it's already like a little bit more intelligent in keeping the form. We're almost there, everyone. I'm so hot. Surface deform. This one's really handy. I didn't know about this one before. So their example for this was if you want to like have something react like cloth would. So if you wanted to do a cloth simulation but with a really complicated object. So if you want like winds, blinds like blowing around in the wind, or like a macrame like tapestry kind of like reacting like fabric, rather than having to put the cloth sim on that like complicated mesh, you're gonna just put it on a plane like usual, and with what is it called again? Surface deform modifier on like my macrame braided rug hanging thing, it will get the same transformations that my like cloth sim plane did. So I put it on this archway. Let me undo it. So surface deform, I have to do 2 steps to get it to work. I have to first choose a target, so I'm just choosing this plane, and then I'm going to hit bind. So if I go in and try to move around my plane now, you can see nothing's happening. But if I hit bind and I move it around, you can see it moves around my archway mesh. So again, really handy for cloth simulations, which I'm really excited about that. So you could just work with the plane instead of that hot mess. Warp is very confusing. It's like using, you have your intended object, and then you have 2 other objects that it like chooses an average between them to deform your object. So I don't see why we'd use that. Then we have wave, which is this little friend. It works with our timeline. So if I hit play, you can see it's making a wave. The OG wave like starts from the center. If you want it to start at a different location, you can change the position. So if I choose like 5 meters, you can already see it looks different, but if I hit play, You can see now it's doing a little wave. And depending on how far your position is, it might take a while for it to start with your timeline. And that's just because it's like starting 5 meters away and has to travel over. So we have a wave. So that's all of our deforms. Last but not least, simulate. So this is all of our physics options. We do have a physics tab that does all of this stuff, but they are modifiers, so you can apply them and make them permanent. So that was handy with cloth if you wanted like to keep our blankie instead of having to like drop it each time. But I'm going to skip over the first couple because we've gone over them. Cloth, we used it to make a blanket, tablecloth, pillows, curtains, anything fabric-y. Collision, we use that if we want these simulations to interact with something. So if I wanted my blanket to fall in a bed, I put the collision on the bed so it would land on the bed. Otherwise, our meshes would like go through each other. But the first one we're going to use is dynamic paint. So dynamic paint uses two objects. So let me take it off first. I put in this plane and I put in this cylinder. How do I take stuff off? There it is. Okay, so my plane, I'm going to be using this as a canvas, and then I need another object. Doesn't really matter what it is. I just chose a cylinder. That's going to act as my brush. So I'm going to put the modifier on both of them. So canvas, dynamic paint, open up the options with that pill, otherwise they are under the physics properties. I want this set to a canvas. I'm going to do add canvas. And then I am going to go to my brush, which is my cylinder. I'm going to add dynamic paint, go to the settings, change the type to brush, and do add brush. So now, after we have this set up, we have a few options. So the default option is paint, which we don't want to do what the name tells us to do. We want to do the exciting things. Wait, what did I literally, guys, help me. So if we go to our canvas object under surface, if you hit surface type, you can see there's a few options. So we have displace and waves I want to show. So we have our canvas on, our brush on, and then we went to our canvas, click on surface type, we put on displace, and now if I hit play, you can already see some stuff happening, but sneak peek. Click on my brush, hit G, and you can see that I displaced my mesh. So this might be handy to use instead of the Boolean for like some instances if you want to like press into an object. I don't really know. Again, it depends on how many vertices you have, like how good it's gonna look. But you could use it with the subdivision surface, and it might like be better. Don't tell Boolean I said that. But now if I hit play, you can see my little like cylinder hopping around. I can like choose a specific point on the timeline. I can apply it to keep this. But I also have, I want to show the wave option because that one's fun. If you need like very specific points where you're putting ripples, you can watch my little wave. Whee! Oops, I meant to pause it. So that's what that is. Dynamic paint. Really fun to play with. What do we have next? We're almost there, everyone. Explode. This is the opposite of build. You need particles for it to work, so we'll be going over particles next video. So I'm just gonna like skip past that, but here we have it working. It's exploding piece by piece. So how much you want it to explode kind of relies on how many subdivisions. So let me just chop up this block. And then we need our explode modifier. If I hit play, nothing happens because we need our particles to push the pieces off. So I'm just gonna really quick add some. Here's particles. We'll do a quick demo of them next time. And now if I hit play, nothing will still happen because our order matters. We have to change the order. So you can see we have our particles here. They have to go above our explode. Now if I hit play, it's exploding. If you want to like shatter some glass, you can see it, this plane is a collision, has a collision on it, and it's catching my pieces. It's like rebuilding them. I could even like put the solidify modifier on it so the pieces like have some substance to them. But now we have like a little pixelated cube. Ocean! Let's take off our particles and our explode. Fluid. Oh, we're skipping fluid because I can't imagine it's gonna work on people's computers. This would be how you could make like really realistic liquids and fluids and such. I think it's gonna kill us. So we're skipping to ocean. Ocean is like the one simulate deformer that doesn't use the timeline. If you want a different version of the ocean, you just play around with the sliders. So we can't see the ocean working live. There's our ocean. Particles, we'll do those next time. But they are a modifier. They also have their own tab. And then last but not least, the least is mask. We know what least is deep down. It's not soft body. I put a collision on this plane just so we can see what happens, and then I put a subdivision on this just to make it more like squishy looking. Oop. Let's put it, okay. And then I put soft body on it. This is the default. Collapses into itself. Actually, I might have made some changes. I probably check marked all this business. So stiffness, it's gonna give it a little more structure so it's not as collapsible. Self-collision, so if it does collapse, it's not colliding with itself. But most of the changes you're gonna be making are within the pull and push area. So higher on both of those, the more stable your jelly will be. So this is just like a nice solid jelly. You know, that's weird. Don't say that. The lower they are, the more like it's like a deflated bouncy castle, someone said. Or those like store noodles. But most of it is going to be playing around with pull or push. You have all these other settings, but really just playing around with those to tell how structural / or squishy it is. Oh my god. I made a mistake. Oh, if I crash before I finish this, goodbye everyone. Or fine. Oh, we made a tooth. Oh, that's a pleasant. Oh, look at that one. That's a good one. That's a good jelly. So that is all of our modifiers. Well, not all of them. I skipped over some strategically. So a lot of these are more than you will ever need to do. There's probably other ways to do a lot of this, but it also has a few helpful things that hopefully now you know the potential. So I'll see you guys next time.